Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Mind Game. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Mind Game is a movie that came out in 2004 and was directed by Masaaki Yuasa. And I'd heard a lot of very positive things about this movie. I'd heard that the animation was spectacular, that it goes through a lot of different animation styles. I'd heard that this movie was very well received, that it had won international awards and been praised by other directors. So as you might imagine, when I saw that it was on offer on the Anime Limited shop, I was thinking to myself, I should definitely pick this up and check it out. So of course, having watched the film now, the question is, as always, is the movie any good? And that's what we're going to be discussing today. So let's get started. So what is the story of Mind Game? Mind Game follows a character called Nishi, who wants to become a manga artist. And one day he comes across a childhood friend of his, Myon. And he's always had a crush on Myon, but he's never had the courage to be able to act upon it. And while he's hanging out with Myon, discussing things, etc., she informs him that she is engaged to someone. And as you might imagine, he is quite upset by this, but he doesn't have the courage to be able to flat out tell her. So he just congratulates her. And they head back to her family's place, which is a restaurant, where her sister and her father are. And while they're talking, her fiancé walks in. And her fiancé is good looking, handsome. He feels intimidated by him. And again, he is unable to do anything or to say anything. And eventually, these two men walk in. One of these men is very unnerving. He's twitching, he's making these kind of weird noises. He's upsetting everyone at the restaurant. And it turns out that they are looking for Myon's father. That's how the story begins. Now, with regards to the story itself, the story here is truly interesting. It goes in a lot of directions that I was truly not expecting. And the ultimate message here, which I'm not sure if this is the message that everyone took away from the movie, that you should be yourself, that you should act like yourself, you shouldn't be restricted by what other people think, etc., is something that really speaks to me very closely. So from that perspective, I really enjoyed the story. The characters are very likable, but I do have a couple of criticisms of the story. There is a lot of interest in developing the background of many of these characters through these montages. And while some of them definitely work, I think some of the others kind of feel a bit superfluous to me. However, that shouldn't take away from the fact that ultimately I did actually find this story very enjoyable. Nishi himself is a very interesting character in that he starts out very kind of uncomfortable, unsure of himself, unwilling to make a stand on anything. And later on, he becomes rejuvenated, able to live life as he wants to. Unrestricted by anything else. And to me, I found that really, really enjoyable. The process through how many of these other characters developed was also something that I found very enjoyable. And I enjoyed the story overall. Of course, the main thing, the thing that everyone talks about when it comes to this movie, the animation. Now, the animation for this movie was done by a studio called Studio 4 Degrees Celsius, which to me always seemed like a studio that was quite different to many other anime studios. More adventurous when it came to the styles of animation that they would use, a bit experimental, etc. And this movie very much reinforces that idea. The thing that really stands out about the animation in this movie is the variety. There's photographs of people that are animated to look like they're moving. There's some very psychedelic looking animated sequences, which I really, really enjoyed. And one that I particularly enjoyed, even though it's very short within the movie, is a sequence in which a character remembers this old anime show that they used to watch. And the art style for the show, as well as the fact that it's in black and white, very much evokes kind of memories of stuff like Astro Boy, Tetsujin 28 and all that stuff. Admittedly, the animation is much higher quality and more fluid than anything you would have seen in those shows back in the day. But nonetheless, I found that very enjoyable. And the animation in general is absolutely spectacular. There's a lot of fluidity to the animation, which I absolutely love. And for the most part, the way that everything is animated speaks very well to the type of story being told. Admittedly, when it came to the real-life photo images that are animated in the movie, I must admit that I didn't like them quite as much as I thought I would. They seem a bit jarring in contrast to a lot of the other animation, which very much fits into the movie. And it also seems like it's used a bit haphazardly. At first I thought it might have had something to do with close-ups, but later on it seemed like they were just doing it kind of for the sake of it. Now, I am happy that they ended up doing that type of animation because it definitely stands out, but I do confess that I didn't like it as much as I thought I would when I heard about that type of animation. But in terms of the rest of the movie, it's colorful, it's fluid, It's beautiful looking in many sequences. I think that the animation for this movie is definitely very much the selling point. No wonder everyone talks about the animation of this movie. Now, with regards to the music for this movie, the music for this movie is very, very expertly handled. Just like the animation, there is a lot of different types of music in this movie. From some classical music being played in certain sequences to some very actiony music played during certain sequences. I think in general the music for this movie is done incredibly well and always fit the scenes that they had to supplement. And actually I found myself listening to certain sequences from this movie as I work away on other stuff, which says something about how much I enjoy the soundtrack for this film. So I think that the soundtrack for the film is very good. It was very well done. It is an area that I think is a bit surprising when it comes to how few people talk about that particular aspect of the movie. Perhaps the animation just stands out so much more to them. Now, with regards to the voice acting, now this edition that I have only has the Japanese voice acting in it. I don't know if there is any English dub ever produced for this movie, but I have to say that I really do like the voice acting in this film. Admittedly, it is very, very stylized, to the point where it is quite over the top in many sequences, but I do think that it works very well. You see, at the beginning of the movie, there's a lot more subtlety to their acting when the story is much more kind of realistic and grounded. Whereas as the movie goes on and things become crazier and crazier, characters' voices start to become more and more over the top, always keeping up with how crazy the story is becoming. And there are even some sequences later on where the characters are being serious and they have to rein down their over-the-topness back to kind of more subtle acting, and they're able to do that no problem, which I think is absolutely incredible considering how wacky this movie can get. I can definitely say that the Japanese voice actors did a fantastic job here, being able to keep up with the tone of the movie as it shifted from over the top to realistic to over the top, etc, etc. They did a really good job. Now, with regards to how this was released, now the edition that I have here is from Anime Limited. And for the most part, this is a decent release. It's Blu-ray, and of course, considering how visually scrumptious this movie is, picture quality looks crisp and clean. As I mentioned before, there is no English dub, but just like some of their other releases, there is interestingly an option here to actually watch the movie with French subtitles. So if you want to watch this movie in the Japanese language, but with French subtitles, you're able to do that with this film, which I think is quite nice. However, after that, there is very little extra. There's a gallery, but that's pretty much it. While I do find that quite a shame, it would have been interesting to see some of the behind the scenes of this film. I think it's still a respectable release. Overall, what are my thoughts on Mind Game? Mind Game is a movie that actually surprised me quite a bit with the story, with the direction it wanted to go in, with the message that it ultimately wanted to give, etc, etc. And even though I don't necessarily like everything that happens in the story, I still think that this movie has a lot to say about the human condition and the way that we're kind of afraid to be our own true selves in front of other people. The animation is spectacular. Granted, I'm not the biggest fan of the way that these kind of photographic people were integrated into the movie, but barring that, the animation itself is beautiful with a lot of fluidity, a lot of shifting styles, etc, etc. I think that if you're interested in movies that really push the boundaries of animation, then I really do think that you have to check out Mind Game. It is a surprisingly enjoyable movie. One that, honestly, I can't wait to show other people and to see how they react to this film. So those are my thoughts on Mind Game. Let me know your thoughts on Mind Game. Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Do you know if there was ever an English dub produced for this movie? What are your thoughts on the way that the animation was done in the movie? Did you like those kind of photographic segments? What was the message that you got from this film, etc, etc? And of course, if you have any other information about Mind Game, about Masaaki Yuasa, etc, etc, please leave it in the comments below. Of course, if you want to support the channel, I would encourage you to use my Amazon and Right Stuf affiliate links in the description below. When you purchase an anime or manga through those affiliate links, not only are you supporting me, not only are you supporting the channel, but you're also supporting the anime and manga industry. So I would highly encourage you to use those affiliate links to purchase your anime and manga. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.